Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void Podcast. I'm Enrique, my co-host Vince, and we have an Air Force visitor guest on our show. I'm so excited to highlight her. I'm gonna let Vince introduce.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited and elated as well. But we are actually going now on a national tour to Las Vegas metropolitan area to speak with Brittinay Lenhart, who is the founder and lead consultant at Work Culture Consultant LLC. So welcome, Brittinay, for being here. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm an Air Force veteran. I did 8 years. Long story short, first I was a jet engine mechanic on fighters like F-22, F-35. And then I cross-trained and I was the Secretary of Defense's flight attendant for the last part of my career and traveled all around the world and I loved it. I was with Leon Panetta and Chuck. There you go. Boom. There it is. And it was an amazing career. And then long story short, I got out of the military and did some contracting work because that's always a good segue for us when we get out. But I really wanted to figure out what it was I wanted to do for the rest of my, I'm an adult. What do I do now that I'm out of the military? And went to a Tony Robbins seminar, realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, figured out that my passion was work cultures, and here we are.
Outstanding. Now, I mentioned your Air Force. I'm Navy. We have Vince and I have uh, created a great relationship. But guess what? This Navy man spent most of his career on Air Force
Mhm.
bases. So guess I loved it, and you guys have done such a great job in the last 70 years past that you've been around. But you mentioned entrepreneurship, and that's something that's near and dear to both our hearts, Vince and I. So you started the Work Culture Consultant. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I, during my contracting, I was actually working at a NASA contractor, and it was one of the most toxic work environments I have ever experienced. Even in my darkest military days, nothing compares to this. And long story short, I left only after 7 months, and that company actually is no longer shocking. But that entire experience really made me realize how important work culture was. And when you wake up in the morning to dread to go to work, that is a bad place to be at. And people deserve better. There was a lot of people I worked with, a lot of engineers, scientists, blue collar, everything. There was amazing people that really wanted, they saw the vision of the company and they really wanted to help, but we had this toxic CEO and people that wanted to be leadership, but I won't give them that name, management, that just did a lot of people dirty. And I just realized there has got to be someone that can come in and help remedy these situations. And a lot of my degrees are have IO background, which is organizational psychology, but it's in organizational management is my degrees, and it had a lot of aspects of culture and things like that. And I'm like, when I got out and I had time to sit and figure out what I'm going to do and what my next job's going to be, I was like, why don't I figure out how to make this a job? Like, you've never heard of a work culture consultant before because it didn't exist and I made it up. But it's not that I made it up and it wasn't, it didn't have a value add somewhere in the workplace. So I just took something that I was passionate about. I understand that, good leadership, that high productivity, and it's good for the people, it's good for the business, it's good for your bottom line. So I wanted to be a part of that, and that is what I do. I help more so startups now build a foundation that they can utilize and sustain success with, because it's a lot harder. I had actually pivoted my business recently and I realized that I can't target a market of toxic work cultures, because usually that if they're already toxic, there's no, it's really hard to fix that. And you have to have leadership that understands that they need fixing. In most cases, when something's already toxic, they don't want that self-awareness. So I work with the foundations of startups, usually for the most part.
Well, obviously you found your niche, and it seems like as a lot of entrepreneurs, it grows out of necessity or a pain point. And here's both of them combined, and you created this wonderful consulting program or organization. So, just curious, first how long you've been around in doing this, and how you holding up, and what are you currently doing?
So go me. I started right before COVID hit. We and so I kind of like in October of 19 is when I kind of on LinkedIn was like, hey, and I started my personal branding with everything. And so January hit and I went to a growth con, um, Grant Cardone's, and actually got a client in an elevator. And I was like, this is a great way to start the year. Yay. But then COVID hit and they had to pull out. Absolutely understood that. They were, I don't even think, I don't even know if they exist anymore, but it was pretty hard for them. So I totally understood. So that was like, a blow to me. I was like, yeah, this is going to be my first client. It's going to be big. It's going to be great. And it just didn't go well. But thankfully, I was able to use LinkedIn, my podcast, and YouTube to, you know, get this awareness about branding out there. And it did help. I got small clients here and there. And eventually, the more my following grew, and I'm not one of those people, I'm just saying the more visibility I got, the more clients I was able to get. So I guess I've been around, I would say a whole year now. And, I got clients, retainers and things like that. And it's going better now. Like 2021 has been better to me than 2020. 2020 was a lot of pivoting and understand and smaller clients, which I still appreciate my smaller clients, absolutely. But I'm trying to get the big ones as well. And that's 2021's been a better year for that. So I think now that things are getting a bit better, people are starting to be less worried about hiring a consultant, because I absolutely understood that people needed to like reserve their funds, but now they're understanding that this is an investment in their business. So that's where I'm at now.
I love that you mentioned investment because Vince and I understand the entrepreneur world pretty much that it's not an easy thing, and so we encourage you to keep going because that's gonna come for you. So keep pressing on. Now, in pressing on, you got a future. So tell us a little bit about what it looks like for your company here in the future.
So something that I'm working on, so be on the lookout for, is a workshop. Because I realized, and at first, I'm not gonna lie to you, I thought that was lame and it was just a way for people to get quick money. But I was like, no, this can be good if you do it properly. So I want to make a vision, mission statement, values workshop for these startups because maybe they don't have the funds to do a whole thing with me or something like that. Well, okay, let's just do this workshop because this is vital to your startup. So that's something that I am working on at the moment.
Definitely seems like you have different packages you can offer. So that's a great thing. And as Enrique mentioned, we all have to pivot. And as we start out as solopreneurs, and once we'll grow, these are the pain points, but are the pivots that are great lessons to make us go forward in life. But we all start from a leadership point, right? We all have a great foundation. And this is a good segue to talk about that foundation. Your 8 years, your higher education, your own experiences before and after the Air Force makes you who you are as a great leader. So let's just dive into ask what professional development areas do you work on to improve your capabilities as a leader?
So as you guys probably hear me preaching all the time on LinkedIn about emotional intelligence, that is huge for me. And I actually heard that the Air Force is starting to put that into their EPR system. So winning, but it's something that I read a lot about. And from a spiritual place, I also use emotional intelligence and learn a lot about that. That has also helped my, I feel, leadership capabilities. So.
Yeah, you mentioned EQ as we would refer to it, so vital, and you know Yeah, you may be preaching to the choir here, but this podcast is high on EQ. We try to make sure that we push that. So you're headed right down the right road, especially when you're talking about working with startups. You want to develop that right off the bat. And so, you're training people to learn how to adapt some emotional tendencies to their leadership. What kind of advice did you get while you was emerging as a leader that kind of led you that way? Maybe not straight as a EQ type of topic, but that led into that arena that now you could share with someone else that's coming up.
I think that I had two amazing mentors within the Air Force, and one of them told me to trust my intuition, and that has been very big for me. When I don't trust it, it goes south, and she was right. So that's a big one. You need to trust your intuition. If you feel like someone is a bad apple within your organization and you feel that within your gut, you need to go with that. You can remedy it and or try to remedy it, but in the corporate world, you have the ability to tell people that they have an opportunity elsewhere. So, but if they're hurting your organization, trust your gut. So that's one thing. And then my other amazing mentor, he also, this is in the aircraft maintenance world, trust but verify was a big thing. And it's very true because you can trust somebody, but at the end of the day, you're covering you and you're covering them. And it's good for everybody. And it doesn't mean that you don't have trust within your people. It's just good to have that so that we're as a team covering each other, And unfortunately, yes, I had those two amazing mentors, but with the leadership and experience in the Air Force, I learned a lot of what not to do from people. Um, that's not to knock the Air Force or anything, that's anywhere really, but a lot of my leadership lessons were looking at people that I did not want to be like and be like, I need to be the opposite of that.
I mean, that transcends through anybody, anywhere, any level of parents, siblings.
True,
But
true.
it's true, But I love the fact that you said trust and verify, and I wish we all could do that in our current situation, in our current media and social media. We should
Yes.
trust, but we should also verify. It's so true. But I guess trust yourself and have that self-worth component because you know. Uh, we all have that little voice in our head that takes over and unfortunately makes us, to your point, go south. And let's talk about south because those are the challenges that we have, and we want to look at true north, but we have to sometimes pivot, go east, west, or south for that. So what challenges have you faced or currently faced, and how do you rectify them? What would you share about that?
Well, being an entrepreneur can be difficult. And being a female doing what I do can also be difficult because I have lost a client due to the fact that their wife did not approve of me. This is something that happens, and it's unfortunate, and it's a reality that I don't mind talking about because the more that we can talk about this, the more there's awareness. So I had to sit with that and stew on the fact that I lost a lot of money only because of the fact of something that I had no control over. So that's where serenity comes into play. I can lose my mind over this and flip out, or you realize that there's nothing I can do about it. I did nothing wrong. This was an outside situation. So I sat with that. A big thing with this is, how I handle challenges. I might vent to a confidant, people like another veteran, in which I'm really good friends with, Natalie Olivero, that you guys know her with Military Talent Partners. I might call her up, and sometimes, you just need someone to bounce ideas off of. Like, was it me? What could I have done better? This is and that, with other entrepreneurs, so that you can come back to a homeostasis after challenges like that. But just sitting with them, trying to take any lessons learned that you can. And one of them was, and entrepreneurs listen, no one is your client until they sign that proposal, period. So you know, they have to have a level of respect for you as well. Don't waste your time like, oh, I'm just going to do all this stuff for them in the beginning, and then, because they're gonna pay me, and then something like this happens. That was my lesson learned there. So
Yeah, certainly some tough lessons. You mentioned a point there that we could probably have an entire show on, right? The perceptions and how people concerning certain things. And, Vince and I are big in DEI. You talk about war first culture. It's a real thing, and so we may have a part two on that if you don't mind down the road.
here for it.
but when you talk about challenges, those are definitely some challenges that bring change. And so with change, you need to have some type of strategy. Now, in the military, they teach us how to have some strategic points where we can actually pivot without losing sight of the mission.
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give people that are looking at change now and have to enact something to be able to, get through that change?
So, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So even within my company, I kept targeting toxic work cultures. Like, I want to change that. And I realized you can't change that when you have narcissistic CEOs. Like, they don't want to change because they don't feel like they're the problem. So that's a bad market, right? So I had to sit in that and make a plan as to how I'm going to pivot. Like, what can I do different? And I realized I need to pivot and work with startups. I had to sit down and think, how can I pivot? And you just have to realize that, it's not necessarily you that did something wrong. It's just that you're targeting the wrong market. Um, and, find ways that are going to be useful to people. So that's why, I went to the startup route, because when you have an established company and they turn toxic, it's a lot easier to build a foundation than fix a big old problem. So there are still ways to fix that, because some CEOs come in and they inherited that bad work culture. So I'm not completely throwing that off the table, but in the military, we got to pivot all the time. You know, Even like on the jet, when I was working with the Secretary of Defense as his flight attendant, if we ran out of something 30,000 feet in the sky, you better figure it out. We gotta pivot quick, be on your toes. So it's the same thing, in the entrepreneur life. Figure it out fast.
Absolutely. Pivot is essential. Like we say, flexibility is the key to air power. We have to be ready and using the EQ so we can be, cool headed when we are able to pivot, because change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So change comes all day, every minute. So I love those strategies. I love what you shared about advice and challenges. So folks that are hearing this and or hear this afterwards, we send it out. How do they contact Miss Brittinay Lenhart, or want to get more about information and a package on work culture consultant? How did they go about doing that?
One of the best two ways to get a hold of me is workcultureconsultant.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Brittinay Lenhart, or just plug in work culture consultant. I should come right up, but I put a lot of content on LinkedIn, so that's probably one of the best ways.
Outstanding. And we're going to have that as part of the show notes and part of the video. So look out for that. And if you want to contact us at the Leadership Void podcast, our email is the Leadership Void podcast at gmail.com. And you could send us inquiries. You can send us things that you would like to hear on our show, people you would like to suggest that we interview. And most importantly, if there's anything that resonates with you and you are wanting to share that with us, please do so. Vince, this has been a great episode. It's down the road of what we both share, near and dear to our hearts. So thank you Brittinay, for being with us today and for sharing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the way from Las Vegas, we have Brittany here, and she definitely is doing great things. And folks, if you want to reach her, we will put this again on our podcast. But for those out there, we are in the hunt to reach our 100 subscriber. We are currently at 93 strong, 7 more to go. And those who last 7 who enter and are entering for a drawing of that wonderful book, From the Prairie to the Pentagon, from one of our guests from season 1. So, folks, please join in on that hunt. 7 more to go, easy peasy, and you will not regret that. Also, we are doing 2 things. We are doing radio check, which is pretty much a opportunity to check on our buddies, comms up, see how you're doing. Social isolation is real. We're giving a platform, a live broadcast to hear from you, talk to each other, talk to us on the 1st and the 15th at 7 o'clock, which is 7 o'clock Eastern, 1900 hours. So tune in on the 1st of March at 1900, if not on the 15th. So we'll be there every month. Lights will be on for you to chime in. And we go next week back to Maryland, and we'll speak to another dynamic veteran. So stay tuned for next week. But today, we are honored to have Ms. Brittinay on the show from Las Vegas. Thank you so much. Best of luck with your future endeavors, and congratulations on what you're doing.
Thank you for having me on.